This video is brought to you in part by Squarespace. Welcome back to Sonic Speed Reading. Now, I have been holding off for quite a long time on the Archie Sonic series. It is, as many of you might know, quite the undertaking. Ridiculous art here, lawsuits there. You run the whole gamut of behind-the-scenes comic book drama that you would find in comic series over twice the age of this book. It has some of the worst and some of the best stories ever seen in the Sonic series. And because of that, you will find people that absolutely adore what this book brought to the table, and you will find others that never want to see some of these characters ever again. It's true to Sonic, it's an abomination, it's everything in between. And because of that, it feels a little intimidating to cover. Do I give you a whole bunch of behind the scenes stuff? Do I try and cover this issue by issue? Can I even tolerate reading this issue by issue? Well, folks, we will handle things as we come to them, but for the time being, I thought I would start things off the same way this book did. Keeping it simple. Even though the Archie Sonic series is known for some very convoluted plots or some ridiculous out-of-context scenes that don't really make a whole lot of more sense once they are in context, the books start off like any other tie-in comic book back in the day. It was just a simple little thing made to promote a product. That product being a video game that was hot and new and, well, didn't have a whole lot of lore as far as us Westerners were aware. So as Sega of America was developing 2 different cartoons for Sonic, they were also helping in putting together a comic book. All of these projects would share ideas in between each other, but different canons. And Archie could be seen as the silliest of the bunch, at least for right now, taking cues from both Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, which was more light and comedic, and Sonic the Hedgehog, otherwise known in the fanbase as Sonic SatAM, which was far more serious and plot-focused. It's silly, but not quite as insane as Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog was. I can certainly see the comparisons, but what I'm getting at is Archie Sonic was its own thing, and it certainly would be even more its own thing as the creative team would evolve and change and the years would carry on. But before we get into anything else, we're going to focus strictly on Sonic the Hedgehog issue 0. Yes, I know there was a promotional comic that came out prior to this, but this is the first one that takes place in Archie Sonic continuity. And this was my very first Sonic comic. I actually got the first part of this for free in a supermarket. Yeah, they would split this up and give you a promotional little thing to help sell the book and sell the video game. And I was too young to be able to read it. I was a bit of a slow learner, but I held onto this thing not knowing what came next for a very, very long time. But what kind of thrilling plot left me at the edge of my little seat? Well, let's find out as we explore issue 0. Now, as we look at the cover, first thing you might notice is that Robotnik looks like Robotnik. Yes, he's missing the iconic glasses, but otherwise, this is what the dude looked like on the covers for the American version of Sonic the Hedgehog. And yes, we see that iconic buzzsaw head on the Hedgehog as well. The Eggmobile is blasting out a laser, and sure, could probably do that. Thing can do a whole bunch of things. It's coming out of a monitor, which could be a reference to the in-game item monitors, as well as a reference to Sonic leaving his normal media format, the television, and jumping out onto a comic book page. As it says on the comic book cover itself, this is it, Sonic TM leaps out of your Sega video game system into his very own comic book. Yep, so that's not a Sega system, and as you'll soon find out, Robotnik is never going to look like that in this canon. This is the one and only time this version of the character is depicted in his video game form. Things change as canon changes. I'll talk about that when I have to, but for now, yeah, you can tell they were still trying to figure things out when they were putting this comic book together. Floating rings, loop-de-loops, very clearly Green Hill or Emerald Hill in the background here. Yeah, this is not the kind of stuff you would be seeing a whole lot of in the early days of Archie Sonic. And as you turn the page, we are quickly introduced to the cast of characters we will be coming across, as well as giving you a quick paragraph explaining what is going on. This, of course, was great because outside of whatever we got in the game manual, we really didn't have a whole lot to go off of in terms of what Sonic's world was all about. And hey, even all these years later, if this is your very first experience with this canon, probably do us some good to quickly go over this paragraph. It says, the planet Mobius used to be a beautiful and fun place to live until the evil Dr. Robotnik took over, using his polluting robots. A brave team of freedom fighters struggled to overthrow the dictator, led by the fastest and way coolest dude on 2 feet, Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, for those of you who already are somewhat familiar with this canon, you already can notice something's not quite right. Sonic is not actually the leader of the Freedom Fighters. That duty belongs to Sally, who we can see is red and yellow. Yeah, so this book was developed before they finalized what Sally would actually look like in Sonic SatAM. And they wouldn't stop here because we would get Pink Sally for quite a while before they would finalize on the more chipmunky brown design. They would retcon this later. This is still a part of the canon, so yeah. Point is, while the archetypes of these characters would mostly stay intact, things would change from this first issue, and it'll be fun to see how those things change as we go forward. But we can pick up on some cues from their facial expressions. Sonic looks cocky and confident, Tails just looks happy-go-lucky, Rotor looks chill and laid back, Sally looks like a girl, and Antoine looks like a pretentious snob. And all the bad guys look angry. Yeah, you can tell how early on it is where outside of Robotnik, they also have to introduce the individual badniks, including the Buzz Bomber, which never actually had a design in the games. It's still based off the Wasp and Bee badniks that we'd see early on in the games. Cluck, again, wasn't a badnik of any sort in the games, but would appear in Sonic SatAM. But Crabmeat and Caterkiller, of course, are some of the most iconic badniks to ever exist in the franchise. And yes, they all do have their own voices, but we will get to it when we get to it. The very first thing we see in this book as we turn the page is that they completely changed the design of Robotnik in his Eggmobile. Again, I don't know why they did this. It's like the very next page you see that this is not the same looking guy. And he's chasing Sonic through a field, trying to blast him with Mega Muck. Something that would be used in Chemical Plant Zone, but here it just looks like cement. Sonic is dodging everything that the Good Doctor shoots at him until he runs into a Caterkiller. Clearly, this is the first time Sonic has run into this badnik, and here they would set up some of the plot and stakes that would be consistent in early Archie, where Robotnik threatens to encase Sonic in Mega Muck unless he spills the location of Knothole Village, to which Sonic responds, "And let you capture my friends and turn them into robots? No way, Tubby." So yeah, they quickly tell you Sonic and his pals have a hidden location, and Robotnik has the capability of turning them into robots. With that established, let's carry on with a simple jump, or as Sonic calls it, a Sonic spin. The Hedgehog leaps out of the way of another gush of cement that shoots into the Caterkiller, incapacitating the badnik. Sonic sasses the Robot Doctor again, and then kicks up the Mega Muck as he revs up and shoots off into the forest. From here, Sonic looks directly at the reader and explains that this is the way to Knothole Village. I know, meta, calm down, you're gonna be okay. They've always done this kind of crap. But yes, he explains to the reader that to get into Knothole Village, you have to pull a vine, which will open a stump. You hop on into it, and you go down a ridiculously fun-looking slide, and then from there, you enter the underground village of Knothole. And he's greeted by both Tails and Rotor, who modern Sonic fans might just know as one character who is called Tails. See, back in the day, Tails was simply a kid, just the little brother who idolized Sonic. And Rotor was Sonic's chill friend, and also the mechanic of the group, as is hinted by the tool belt. Sally then shows up to scold Sonic, saying he could have potentially left a trail for Robotnik to find Knothole, but Sonic, confident as ever, tells her not to worry. There's no way he could keep up with his speed, and he's so fast that his feet never touch the ground. No way he could have left a trail. But they're interrupted as Tails attempts to copy Sonic's moves, only to trip himself up, and Sally says, "Isn't it sweet how he idolizes you, Sonic, just like we all do?" which catches Sonic off guard, and Sally quickly corrects herself, saying that she meant all the residents of Knothole, not her, of course. Just imagine. Yeah, so they're quickly establishing Sally as the love interest for Sonic here. They're getting all this out of the way up front. That's the point of this issue. But while they give each other bedroom eyes and weird squiggly mouths, Antoine enters the scene, saying that he has an important announcement for the princess. Sonic immediately bullies him, calling him Knothole's #1 blowhard. And before he can get a single word out, he then asks Antoine what the announcement is. Too much starch in your underwear again? He's just a complete jerk to Antoine, and it's great. I love it. But Antoine says that a leak has been discovered in Knothole that could flood them out, or worse, Robotnik could use trickle-down technology to locate and destroy them. I don't really know what that means, but this, folks, is the end of part 1, and that is all I had for a while as a child. This was all they promoted for Sonic, these few pages here. It's not much of anything, but it does quickly establish this little cute cast of characters. But gosh, what a thrilling development. There's a leak. Can you even believe it? What will they do? Well, folks, it's finally time to answer that mystery. What have I been missing out on for all these years? Part 2 picks up with Robotnik at his desk yelling at his badniks, saying that Sonic the Hedgehog must be eliminated. But how can they do that without knowing where the Freedom Fighters are? Thankfully, Crabmeat has picked something up on their spy screen. It seems a group of non-robots are wandering the edge of the Great Forest, and that could be the Freedom Fighters. And yes, it is the Freedom Fighters. As we switch our attention over to them, Sonic telling his friends to stay back. The source of the leak is just ahead, but they're within range of Robotnik's spy satellites. Tails excitedly says that he'll go check it out, but Antoine stops him, saying that only a warrior of his caliber is qualified. And Sonic agrees, telling Ant he should go right on ahead. And Antoine walks straight into a little pond, or at least that's what it looks like to be anyway. What it actually is a leak from, from weeping willow trees. You see, recently Robotnik bulldozed several acres of forest trying to find Knothole's entrance, and the willows have been crying for their fallen friend. Yeah, folks, that's the caliber of storytelling we're dealing with here. The source of the leak were crying trees. Fantastic. Sonic says he has an idea, but first they gotta get back into the forest. But just then, Robotnik and his Buzz Bomber appears. Yes, it's just Robotnik and one Badnik. They go chasing after the Freedom Fighters, and oh, look at that, we have the Wrecking Ball from Green Hills Zone out and about. That's lovely. Sonic mocks Robotnik to distract him from his friends, and the plan works, having the Doctor chase him up a hill towards a well. It turns out that Sonic hid a magic ring in this well for just such an occasion. But Sonic forgot that rings rise and fall, and he can't feel anything when he dips his hand into the water. But just as Robotnik is about to attack, he pulls out the ring. And, well, they do some interesting things with the rings in this first issue. Sonic uses it like a hoop, jumps through it, and for some reason, the Wrecking Ball follows this as a command and smashes Robotnik directly. Sonic's about ready to take on the Doctor himself, but he grabs onto the stinger of the Buzz Bomber and daintily flies off to safety. Later on, we see the Freedom Fighters planting saplings of the willows, so they don't need to weep any further. We see Rotor burying Antoine, saying, "Oh, saplings. I thought he said, plant a sap." Oh, so funny. And that, folks, is the end of the very first story in the canon of Archie Sonic. And as you can probably see for yourself, there are a lot of things that would be changing as this story would carry on. Sally had a few alternate skins before they landed on the default. The personalities aren't quite established yet. We would still see more silly things like literal crying trees and stuff of that nature for a bit still. But yeah, the rings doing what they did is interesting, and I kind of forgot they had this much power this early on. They were unique, they were special, and like everything else with Sonic, it was new. So Badniks were a little bit more intimidating than most fans probably think of them to be, and the rings were special and essential in Sonic's story. Yeah, it's weird, and I don't think they should have the ability to manipulate Robotnik's machines. That to me just shows folks that didn't even bother playing the games before they started building a narrative around it, which, to be fair, wasn't an expectation back in the day. Again, this all was very, very new, and a lot of these professionals probably weren't experienced with video games anyway. And I prefer to have some emphasis on the rings as opposed to not having them exist at all in a comic book where the story is canon to the main games themselves. But yeah, this was a lighthearted promotional nothing. This was fine. But it doesn't stop there. We do have a little bit more of the book to go. Early Archie Sonic had a lot of extra little fun things to fill out their pages. You gotta remember, this was made specifically for children. There'd be a couple of stories, and in between a lot of them, there would be some one-off jokes. This, for instance, is asking just how fast is Sonic, so we're gonna find out by reviewing Sonic's 6 speed settings. And immediately you can tell they've not played the games, as one shows us Subsonic for underwater, undercover work, showing us a swimming Sonic, which is, well, that's not a thing. Also, just realized looking at this page, Sonic has 4 fingers. That too would change. Then we go down to 2, Ultra Sonic, which would be a form later on in this book. 3, they have Supersonic. Again, don't need to tell you, that term would take on a whole other meaning in the video games. 4 is Transonic, which, well, you know, I'm not even gonna touch that one. 5, Hypersonic. Well, I guess Hypersonic did exist in this continuity at some point. Cool, thanks. 6 is Warp Sonic, and there's an asterisk with a 7 option all about the Sonic spin. It's just Sonic going faster than things you assume to be fast. So starts off with a fish, then a runner, then a cheetah, then a car, then a jet, then light. It's just a cute little thing. But yeah, it's interesting as a lot of these terms would be used for forms. Well, actually, at the same time as the release of this comic book, Sonic 2 was already out. out. When you turn the page, we see the royal family tree of Mobius, and it just shows Sally crying, saying that she was going to show her family tree, but Robotnik chopped it down. Kind of like how Sega chopped down Knuckles after the lawsuits with Ken Penders. But yeah, it's just another pun. They took a full page for it. It's fine. The next page just shows off the different badniks of Robotnik. Some of them aren't exactly the right color, but yeah, it's fun to see what they could work with. All these guys are from Sonic 1, including, interesting enough, the cut badnik Splats. This little robot rabbit would, of course, get a second chance of life much later on thanks to Mania and Superstars. But it's interesting that this robot was in this comic book and actually got a little figure of its own as well, just never appeared in the early game. And at the very bottom, we have a SWATbot saying, "Don't forget the army of SWATbots." Unfortunately, buddy, Sega would forget all about you, which is a shame. Always love that design. The next is a much darker story than everything we've seen so far. Sonic narrates for the readers saying that, "Hey, you probably got the basic idea of what goes down on Mobius, but here you're actually going to see how it got to this situation." He says Mobius was a cool place to live back in the day, and here is where we begin our story as Sonic races on up to Chuck's chili dog stand, where he's greeted by his uncle and his dog Muttski. Dude runs his own chili dog stand, but he is an inventor in his own right, and he had to create shoes that could match Sonic's speed, as apparently they're blowing their entire budget on new shoes for Sonic, which is cute. They didn't ever have to explain anything like that, but I do appreciate that Sonic needs specialized foot gear to handle his crazy running powers. Anyway, while Sonic is petting his dog, Chuck gets an order for 200 chili dogs, which he's hyped about because apparently that makes them rich. But as that's happening, we see a Buzz Bomber putting up a sign saying, "Attention, this city is now to be called Robotropolis. From now on, there's no music, no books, no plants, no games, no dancing, no laughter, and no fun. I am your new evil dictator, Dr. Robotnik. Have fun, go to jail." And this is where some folks get confused with that no fun meme that you see with that SWATbot sometimes. That actually isn't from an Archie comic, that is from a Sonic storybook. But here in issue 0, they had something very similar with this sign. But yeah, it's not quite as memorable as that SWATbot image. Anyway, Sonic sets off to deliver the 200 chili dogs. And as he's gone, Chuck and Muttski are grabbed by SWATbots. They're dragged to Robotnik, where Chuck recognizes the voice. It was Robotnik who ordered the 200 chili dogs. Can you even believe it? We turn our attention to Sonic, who has arrived at the delivery location, which is an ugly factory, something he's noticed have been popping up all over the place lately. He knocks on the door, who is answered by Cluck. Yes, Cluck can talk. Don't worry about it. The chicken refuses to pay the $300 bill, slams the door on Sonic's face, and attempts to drop a wrecking ball on the hedgehog. Sonic realizes this must have been a setup, so he races back to see the SWATbots taking down the chili dog stand. Sonic leaps onto one of the SWATbots, demanding what they did with Uncle Chuck and Muttski, and the SWATbots just respond by saying that the hedgehog must be terminated with extreme prejudice. Now, a lot of these SWATbots would be sassy in Gallagher's early scripts, but here they are stone cold deadly robots. But Sonic quickly takes them out and sees that they are built by Robotnik Incorporated, the same smelly factory he just came from. So he races on back and tries to peer from the bushes to see what's going on. But we see a pair of hands approaching him from behind. Those hands belong to Sally Acorn. It startles Sonic, and he points right at her and declares, "A girl!" Just like any nerd does. She explains that she is Sally Acorn, and she's not just any girl. She's the princess, and her father, the king, has also been kidnapped by Robotnik. Sonic says that's nice, but he's got a job to do. But Sally grabs him by the feet to stop him, pointing out that Buzz Bombers are patrolling the grounds. If they spotted him, he would be fried. So Sonic chills out, especially after Sally explains that she knows where his Uncle Chuck had been taken. And here's a cute little interaction. Sally says that she knows a shortcut, and she hopes that Sonic can keep up with her. And Sonic says, "Speed is my middle name." And he says, "Actually, it's Maurice, but don't tell anyone, okay?" And that little throwaway joke would grow and live on in infamy. And to this day, I still get people in my comments saying, "Did you know his middle name was actually Maurice?" Yeah, I had heard. And Archie Sonic would later on make that very canon. And I gotta tell you, as much as I miss my Freedom Fighters, that is one thing I really don't need them to bring back ever. Anyway, a couple minutes later, Sally and Sonic catch up to Robotnik, standing in front of a group of Mobians, saying that they've been turned into robots, but they're just regular looking dudes with hypno eyes. So yeah, they didn't really bother with the robot look this early on, just going for more of a mindless zombie kind of a thing. A distraught Sonic calls out to Chuck, which catches the attention of Robotnik. Sonic. Sonic tries to reach out to Chuck, but it is too late. He is already a robot. Robotnik sends the SWAT bots after Sonic, but the Hedgehog is good and pissed off, saying he's gonna whirl around faster than ever before, and creates a giant vortex, sending all the SWAT bots flying. Not only that, it looks like the vortex actually wrecks the factory as Sonic rushes off with Sally in his hands. She points him towards Knothole Village, found in the Great Forest. And I do like the trees here. I've never noticed that before. They all have rings around them. I don't know if this was recolored at some point, so they just look like a unique branch or something like that, but I wonder if these were originally supposed to be rings just floating around the trees. Either way, it's a cool look. But yeah, as Sonic and Sally rush off to the forest, she asks him to join the Freedom Fighters, explaining that they're a band of rebels dedicated to overthrowing Robotnik and returning Mobius to normal. And that, folks, is that. Yes, it's silly. Yes, it's short. Yes, a lot of these things would be expanded on or changed up or completely thrown out the window later on. But this was a short little introduction to the world of Archie Sonic. And for what it is and for the time it was released, I do think this holds up quite nicely, especially with Scott Shaw's artwork, which wouldn't be around too long for this book, unfortunately, but we will talk about that when we need to talk about that. Mike Gallagher, I also have to admit, while he is crazy with the puns very early on with Archie Sonic, he did downplay quite a bit for this one, focusing more on setting up the world and the characters and how things are going to play out. Yeah, the Robian designs would change, Sally's design would change, but this is digestible, this is easy to understand, the stakes are very clearly laid out, and honestly, it was kind of cool to see Sonic really let loose. That vortex was pretty rad. And I gotta tell you, even as a kid, when things would get a little bit more complicated, things got a little bit more dramatic, I would still sometimes look back at some of these early stories and really appreciate the lighthearted tone they would take. No, it's not my favorite form of Sonic, but it does still have its charm, and we would see a little bit more of that as this takes off. But yeah, if all you've ever known are lawsuits or the weird, insane things that some of the worst stories of this book would entail, I hope you had fun with this very first issue. It's very simple, very streamlined, but very charming in its own way. Very humble beginnings for what would become one of the most infamous comic books ever created. We will talk a little bit more about behind the scenes stuff. We will get into more detail in lore as necessary, and I probably won't be getting into each and every chapter of early Archie Sonic. Heck, I might not even do that when we get into the more lore heavy stuff, because it does get really tedious. But for anybody asking where they should start with Archie Sonic, you know, I do think there is merit to checking out this silly early stuff. I really do. If puns make you smile, I say read it. Before we wrap up for today, I want to take a moment to talk about today's sponsor, Squarespace. Jumping online and building up your own brand was always an intimidating thing for me, but Squarespace makes that a streamlined, fast, and easy process, all while making you look good thanks to their Fluid Engine, a next-generation website design tool that lets you tweak any of their many templates with easy-to-use drag-and-drop tools. And I don't need to tell you how useful websites can be, whether you want to build up a portfolio of your work, an art gallery, or a shop, because yes, they have everything you need to run your own online business, including analytics that help show you the strongest avenues of growth and help you build up marketing strategies, which include integration with your favorite social media networks. And they can even help you set up an online shop to sell and distribute custom merch. All you have to do is design it and they'll handle production, inventory, and shipping. Really doesn't get any easier than that. And to make it just a bit easier, if you use my link, squarespace.com/gameapologist, you'll get 14 days for free, which is plenty of time to see if this is right for you. And when you want to make a purchase, that same link will get you 10% off your first order. Thank you again to Squarespace for sponsoring the video. But yeah, folks, we'll get into the nitty-gritty very soon. I'm interested to see how I'm going to tackle the next handful of issues. Probably do it all at once. I don't think we need to go this deep into every single thing that shows up, but there are still things that are important for stories that happen much later on down the road. So if you want to join in on this ride, then be sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Give me some feedback. Let me know how you'd like me to tackle everything. And just like this book, we'll figure it out as we go. But yeah, there we go. We have finally started off properly on covering the Archie Sonic series. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and an extra special thank you to the folks who financially support me over on Patreon. Been a wild and crazy year, and honestly, that's been a massive massive help. So guys, I can't tell you enough how thankful I am for you. And of course, I need to give a big extra thank you to these fine folks here. Kyle Winter, Cyrus the Skeptic, Joseph Duncan, Sonic 2 Blue, Josh Strider, Trey Nobles, Hatsworth, Tiny Jericho, Ginger Bob, Jack of All Spades, Tristan Trapp, Meekers, Bo, Dun Dun, Quote, Resident Fanboy, Miles the Prower, Singer J199, Sam Webster, Fish Flop, Lucas Lipker, The Bad Pal, Jonathan Dobbs, Clover Chats, Chad, I've sent my evil clone to find some helium, Cecil the Glade, The Dark Neon, Stefan Plakanica, 3 Monic, Graham J. Hall, Lenny X, Wayne is Boss, Lederick. Oh my god, can you guys hear that? My dog's got a cone on her right now. She jumped out of a car, so she's got a cone. She's stumbling around. David 20 Covers led a lick? Oh my god, did not lead a lick. David 20 Covers led a Rick roll to restore the helium. I'm sure that worked. Thanks, David. Cricket, what is happening? Oh, you look so stupid. Oh, she's just trying to lay down. I can't even imagine. That poor stupid girl. That's what you get for jumping out of a car. Where was I? The Lumberjack, Trash Baphomet, That Pyromane, Enerjack 5, Grayson Conager, Xerxes the Renegade Jin, Ken K, Smiling Friends was right. There's no helium. I don't mind cuss words, but I'm trying not to get canceled on the YouTube.com. It's really annoying. Then 101, Paxton Bisbee, Sindarin 7. Wait, Stevie, what is this? What are you... What did you... Does that say bunny in there? This is insane. It's not even gonna show up on the Patreon screen. It's gonna be those intangible little, like, squares with crosses through them because nobody... Ugh! Twilord. Oh no, I've used up all the helium. What am I meant to do now? The helium thing, this is driving me crazy. Eric Delgado, Crimson Rose, Mooniscent, Roxas the Cat, Godzilla, Makuda of Salt, Gleam the Anomaly, Alexander Watson, Neil Gampa, Conan Kuda, Velex the most powerful ship in the 2 universes, Kaido Prower, Spearmint, Duo of the Cat, Omega Man 21, Pen Adelaide, Daza S, the world's most unironic 8.5 tail stand, one more Sonic Robot. There's helium on the sun. Try looking there. Empty Mecha tried searching the sun for helium, but ended up causing, let's try this. Monomethylhydrazine shortage? What is that? I don't know. On MT, I did see your message on Discord. I will read through it and get back to you soon. I'm sorry. I'm super busy these weeks right now, but I did see your messaging and I will get back to it very shortly. Gob, the RSI, OhGreatGames.com, Sebensol, the SS Sanjik Sailor, Ahoy Shipmates, Salem Hollow, Siegfried Wilder, and Neighbornyard. Neighbornyard? Let me know if I'm saying that right. Oh, thanks for joining. Really appreciate it, guys. All right, folks, that's gonna do it for today. Let me know if you had fun with this. I'll try and figure out how we're gonna tackle the rest of the early days of Archie Sonic, but it's long overdue that we finally covered this book. So until next time, toot toot, Maurice Warriors.